Did you guys get the link for recording yesterday, for yesterday's session?
Yeah, yesterday one we got.
Yes.
Yeah, yesterday one we got.
Okay, good. All right. So, yeah, just want to give a quick recap. We spoke about cloud computing, the modules of cloud computing, and how Salesforce falls under those category. And then I think we signed up for Salesforce. We tried to understand a little bit about what is Salesforce Classic versus Salesforce Lightning. How from the UI point of view, how it looks different. We just touched up on it. And then I think I think yesterday we spoke about the CRM flow, where, how a lead gets created, how the lead gets converted to account, and then, a contact gets created, an opportunity gets created, and an opportunity passes through different phases. And finally, an opportunity being closed won or closed lost. Then at the same time, we spoke about CRM flow and how, and we have seen practically that Salesforce falls under that CRM category. And then we try to understand what customer relationship management is, where CRM is nothing but an application where data related to the interaction, all the interactions that are happening between the client and the customer are being tracked. And then, we created a lead. Then we tried to understand the scenarios of B2B versus B2C, like what is business to business versus business to consumer. And we also noticed that the default application, whatever that's given to us by Salesforce, falls under B2B category, because we have an account. Account is nothing but the entity that the company is doing business with. And then there are contacts, like, which are nothing but the people who work for that account. Okay. Any questions so far on what we have discussed? I know these are like basic topics, just informative topics, but any questions or anything so far? All right. Now, let's talk a few things about software development lifecycle. Okay. So what is meant by a software development lifecycle? Software development lifecycle, let's take an example of WhatsApp. Okay. Somebody has an idea. Some person, whoever started building WhatsApp, they have an idea. Like, they said, they need to build an app that is helpful for communication, that, where people should be able to collaborate, people should be able to, share pictures, have the ability to take pictures and all that. So somebody has a thought, okay? Some person has a thought, like, let's build an application and let's probably try to make money out of it, okay? That's one idea. Or in the same way, even within companies, like in Salesforce, we have a Salesforce application, okay? But remember what I told you, even though Salesforce is giving a sophisticated app, every company does business in a different way. Now, because every company does business in a different way, they want to customize the app in such a way that it is useful for them. Like, that app that they are using is tailor-made for them. So they want to do that. Now, like, things have to be organized, right? Just because somebody wants to build an app or somebody wants to implement something. You will hear the word implementation like millions of times if you're undertaking an IT job. So what does that mean? Okay, that means, so somebody has a thought. Now, that thought have to be converted into a software product. Okay, software development lifecycle is nothing but software development lifecycle helps in converting a thought or converting an idea into a usable product. Okay, that's software development lifecycle. Now, software development lifecycle is nothing but it's a series of steps that needs to be followed before an idea gets transformed into a product. Okay, now let's say some of you, might have an idea and you want to build a product. on Salesforce, even on Salesforce, just like App Store or Google, I think Google Play, you have so many apps, right? Just like that, even in Salesforce, we have something called App Exchange, where we can create our own app. If you know of a business scenario, like, if you know there is a business scenario that can be solved, you can build your own app in your developer org, whatever org that you have signed up. Within that org, we can create an app and we can sell it in the market too. People can download it, and everybody who download it, will pay us money. So we can build an app and we can sell it on the market too. That's absolutely possible too. But now, in order for that idea to be converted into a product, we should we should implement a software development lifecycle. The software development lifecycle process is nothing but a series of steps. Let's talk about what those series of steps are. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So first steps would be see, I built 5 steps here. Now, are these the same words that are used in all projects? No, everybody uses different words. Like, for example, requirements gathering. Within the requirements gathering, there can be business requirements. People call it business requirements gathering, or it can be divided into business requirement gathering and functional requirements gathering. Then there is a technical design step or technical approach step or architectural review. Then the development or testing. People might call it with the different steps, but the idea is same. Okay, so software development lifecycle involves these steps. So let's talk about each step individually for a minute. Okay, let's talk about we took the first example. Talk about WhatsApp. Okay, somebody has an idea that we need to build an app that should be helpful for communication, and maybe they might have an idea. Already we have text messenger and all, but the idea probably that they have is it should have more features like, creating groups or sharing pictures, things like that. Okay, so some person has an idea, but that the person who has an idea is nothing but the owner. So that person might not have any technical knowledge. Okay, but in order to implement that, that person will hire a technical team. And what do they do first? Requirements gathering. Requirements gathering is nothing but, people call it as business requirements gathering as well. This is where the business analysts come into picture. Like in any team, the business analysts come into picture here, where they would talk to the owner. They would talk to the owner and say, hey, what are the thoughts that you have? Like, and you see, people might not be able to express themselves completely when you don't ask them the right question. So business analysts, what do? They document everything. So first of all, we need to build a product that is useful for communication. We need to build a product that should be helpful to create groups. We need a product that should be able to help, all the requirements, whatever they have, they will document it, in a cleaner format, and which is called as a business requirements document. Now, but at the same time, business analysts will also ask them right questions. There are so many techniques like JAD sessions, interview techniques. Oh, that's a separate topic of what business analysts do. So they create all those things. They have lots of meetings. They will have 2-on-4 discussions and gather all the requirements and prepare a document of what needs to be done. So for any product to be built, the business requirements document is the basis through which the actual product would be built on. So that document is the basis of what this project is trying to achieve. Then the technical design. Technical design is nothing but, somebody will take the business requirement. When I say somebody, people who work as a technical architect or, solution architect, they will take the technical, what you call the business requirements document, and they will make some high-level technical decisions. High-level technical decisions is nothing. In case of WhatsApp, if we take, do we build it on, like, do we build the app for desktop? Do we build the app for mobile? If we build the app for mobile, should we start building on iOS or should we start building on Android? Okay, let's take both. If we start building on both, what should be the database that needs to be used? Okay, let's decide. Now, within that, then how should the data model be created? Like, how the data should be stored? What kind of programming language that needs to be used? If all those decisions are taken, how do we write? Like, what are the things that needs to be done in order to convert these requirements into a viable product? So technical design is a high-level design, which will be taken over by the developers, and actual coding or configuration, all those things will be done by the developers. Okay. So once the developers do this, then of course, we need to test the product, whether it's working fine, whether it's, doing whatever things that it is supposed to do. I'll just say UAT as well. I'll add one more step here. So testers, there will be QA team, testing team. I'm sure you must have heard about. So the QA team or the testing team will actually use the product and, follow, like they will check whether the end product that is built by the developers is matching the requirements or not. So even testers will keep a copy of the requirements document, and they will start testing each scenario after scenario, and they'll make sure the developed product is matching with the requirements or not. If it is not matching with the requirements, they'll make a note of the things that are missed or that are not working, and then, developers have to fix that. Okay. Now, once the testing is also done, then we have something called UAT. UAT stands for user acceptance testing. Okay, let me just type it. I mean, this is the word that you'll hear a lot, because a lot of people hate this. So UAT stands for user acceptance testing. Now, you see, this job is all done by the technical team, right? So technical team, now who are users? Like the ultimate users are nothing but for applications like WhatsApp, we are the end users. So they will choose some random, people who are interested in doing the testing. They'll choose those random people, ask them to download the app and start using it. And they will get a feedback, to ensure that, how from a user community perspective, how it is working. So the actual user acceptance testing is nothing but after the product is built, the actual users will use it and say whether, the product is working correctly or not. Then deployment. Deployment is nothing but moving the code, like, all this development, the whole development will happen, and all the code or the configuration items, whatever they have done, they need to move it from one environment to another. Like, what is this moving from one environment to another? Let's talk about it. Now, I think everybody uses Facebook, right? So the version of the Facebook that we use is called the production environment, because it's a real environment. So all our data and everything is in Facebook right there. Now, does Facebook make enhancements or not? Yes, it does. People who are using from Facebook from 2011 or 12, they will know we never used to have a feature called timeline. Previously Facebook used to look differently. Then later, I think in 2014 or sometime, they introduced something called timeline. And, for New Year's, they will automatically introduce a feature called, what happened over the year, like, what happened over the year. Or for birthdays, they will send you something. These are all the new features that they are adding. Now, when they're adding the new features, of course, they might be writing code. They might be doing some configuration changes. They might be adding tables to the database. So where are they doing? Are they doing all those changes in the in the Facebook instance that we are using? No. We are using a live environment. If they are making all those changes there, the services will be disrupted for us every time. So then what is Facebook doing? Facebook have testing environments, just like exactly how the production, how whatever the real environment or real Facebook instance that we are on, they will also have similar copies called testing environments. So what do? They do the coding in those testing environments. All the testing, user acceptance testing, everything will happen in testing environments. And when everything is ready, when all the coding and everything is ready, that's when they will move, that's when they will move all the code. They will bundle, they will package all the code, and they will move that code into production environment. When they deploy those things into production environment, that's when we all see the changes. Like, we are end users. Now, Facebook has a team, Facebook has developers, Facebook has business analysts, they have everybody. So they are doing all the work, and the developers and whatever work that's done by their developers and administrators is bundled by their deployment team, and they deployed the changes into, deployed is nothing but they moved the code or configuration changes into a production environment, which is nothing but what we are using. And when they deploy it, we see it. We see. I think recently we only used to have like button, but they instead of like, they introduced a new feature, where you can select your emotion there. Now, what did they do? They develop everything. They don't test right away. If they are testing right in the real environment, when you log in, you will be seeing all those changes. But that doesn't happen. They select a date, and that's when they move the changes from the test environment into production. So once that production environment, people call it as a deployment or go live or whatever it is, it depends on the company. And that's when we will be seeing the changes. So that process is nothing but deployment, moving changes from a test environment to another. Okay. Even in Salesforce world, we call those test environments as sandboxes. Okay, in Salesforce world, the test environments are called as sandbox. Each test environment is called a sandbox. So, for us, for practice, we don't have sandbox, but in real time, if you go work for a company, just like our Salesforce instance, whatever Salesforce instance that you logged in, it's a production environment. In the same way, every company will have a production environment, and at the same time, they will have numerous sandboxes. Okay, these sandboxes are called testing environments. So when you have a change, when somebody asks you to make some change, or when somebody asks you to write some code, you would never write directly in production. You will always write it in or develop it in one of the sandbox, make sure it is working fine, make sure you get the approval from QA team and user acceptance team that, yeah, everything is looking good. And that's when your change, whatever development that you have done, will be deployed into the production environment. Okay. But for practice, for us, Salesforce didn't give all those things. For us to practice, Salesforce gave one direct production org, because see, this is not the practice environment that we have is not used at a commercial level, right? It is used for us to practice things. So even if something is wrong, even if you write some wrong code or something, nobody's impacted except us. So that's why Salesforce did not give us sandboxes for the practice environment that we get. But now, what is meant by sandbox? Sandbox exactly is a replica of the production environment, but probably with less data, or probably with just test data. So it's an exact replica. So when you log in, when you see sandbox is nothing different from what the environment that you have. It's just the impact, whatever code that you write, the impact will be low. But if you make some change directly in production, the impact will be high. That's why every environment or everywhere you will have a sandbox. I'm not sure in your childhood, people used to maintain something called classwork and then something called fair notes, where, you do all the classwork is rough notes that you take, and then finally you write a fair copy of everything. I think, it's a similar concept. Sandbox is nothing but, where you can play around, you make your changes and everything. Once you finalize on something, that's when you move on to a fair copy, or the real copy called as the production environment. Okay? And that production environment is something that's used by everybody. Take example, anything, even Gmail. The Gmail version that we are using is the production version, is the live version. Now, Gmail, do they make enhancements? Of course they make enhancements. If you have seen Gmail in last 3 years, they made many enhancements. Now, where do those enhancements happen? Just like similar to whatever Gmail copy that you are using, in Google, there might be a Gmail team, and the developers, they have test environments that look exactly like us. They're writing code, they're making all the changes, and once everything is finalized, they'll push all those changes into the live environment where, and that's when the changes are pushed, we'll be able to see those. Okay, so these are the steps in software development lifecycle, like requirement gathering, technical design, development, testing, UAT, deployment. You take any project, any technology, irrespective of whether it's Salesforce or any technology, these things will be there, no matter what. Now, what are the software development lifecycle methodologies? Okay, so we have the reason, again, if you look at any requirement, and you just go to LinkedIn or just go to any job recruiting site. You go to any job requirements, you'll see should have experience with Agile methodology. Should have experience with Agile. You will see that word a lot, and even in the interviews, right? When you are giving the interview, 99, not even 99, I'm assuming 100% of the time, the question would be, hey, when you are, of course, they will ask about, hey, what's your current project, where you're working, and all that. So one of the question would be absolutely, are you following Agile methodology? What kind of SDLC that you are following at your company, at the current job that you're working, or are you following Agile, and talk something about it. That would absolutely be a question in any of the interview that you face. Okay, so now let's talk about the differences between Waterfall and Agile. So Waterfall model is nothing but all these steps happen one after the other. That means, let's say somebody, like you mentioned, somebody has an idea. So they have an idea, or let's introduce let's build. Take the example that we spoke of, let's build WhatsApp. So they have an idea on 1/1/2019. Let's say somebody woke up with a New Year resolution that they are going to build a app and they're going to put it in the market and sell it. And okay, that person hired a team. They put up a project team, and they employed Waterfall model. Now, this is also called as traditional model. So what do? First, they gather the requirements, okay? Once the requirements are gathered, they will document all the requirements, and they will lock that document. Okay, the requirement gathering is done. They will not add any requirements, remove any requirements. They will lock down the requirements. Once the requirements are locked down, then they will give it to the technical team. The technical architect will review the requirements document and come up with the architecture. We will employ this design here. This is how we do. This is how we write the code. This is the data model that we use. The technical architect will come with all the design. After the technical design is completed, it would be handed over to the developers. Okay, developers would start developing things. They will fully complete the development, and once the development is completed, they will give it to testers. Testers will do the whole testing. They will do the UAT. Once the UAT is done, they will do the deployment. Okay, so by the time the thing is, in Waterfall model, once before the next step starts, the previous step should be completed, fully completed. So the requirement gathering should be logged, and that's when the document should be logged, and the process should complete. One process should complete before the next thing. So by the time it gets implemented, probably it will be. So it may take 2 years to do the whole thing, and it may take 1/1/2021. They might go live, and the product is available to the customer. So this is Waterfall model. Now, let's talk about some of the advantages first. Okay, Waterfall model has so many advantages. One would be, the requirements are freeze. That means, so they are like business analysts are giving a document that says, you know what, we are going to build a product with these set of requirements. It should have these features, okay? And then handing it over to the technical team. So what can the technical team do? Because the scope is frozen, that means because the scope of the product is, the technical team exactly know the scope of the product, they can follow all the best practices. They can follow, the best suitable design to meet those requirements. They can do all those. Now, even testing team, because the scope is limited, the scope is frozen, and the testing. So they will do the testing correctly as well. Everybody is aware of what's going on, and everybody knows the scope of the project, and hence the outcome or the quality of the product, that outcomes will be more because every step is frozen, every step is locked down. Okay. But what is the major disadvantage in this? The major disadvantage in this is, see, we are living in a world that's fast-paced, okay? You have an idea in 2019, but by the time all the steps complete and the product comes out, it's going to be 2021. Can you imagine how 2021 is going to look like? You might not, imagine, just make a note of all the, today, right now, let's make a note of all the features that are present in WhatsApp and all the features that you see in Facebook. Imagine after 2 years, how many more features would be there? How many new things that would come? We are living in a world that's moving so fast. Take example of cryptocurrency. Probably in 2018, January, cryptocurrency is such a buzz thing. And now in 2019, if somebody says cryptocurrency, nobody's listening to them. So in 6 months or in 1 year, the overall social dynamics are changing, and hence the product idea that you have in 2019 may not even be valid or may not even be viable in 2021. Okay, so that's the major disadvantage of waterfall model, where you cannot keep up with the change because the scope requirements are done somewhere in the first step, but the product is coming after so many days, and it might not suit the current needs of the user. Okay, let's talk about Agile. I mean, they say it's the latest development lifecycle, but it's been there. I mean, I've been hearing Agile since the time I started working for probably 4 or 5 years now, and I'm sure it must exist. It must have existed even before that, but they call it as the latest model. So Agile is nothing but iterative model. So when I say iterative model, I mean, again, let's not go to the textbook definition. Let's talk about what Agile means. Agile methodology, the goal of Agile methodology is nothing but give the product to the customer first. Okay, even with the basic features, it doesn't matter. I'm sure, the business owner might have 100 ideas. Okay, just like WhatsApp, communication, groups, sharing pictures, making a phone call, making a video call, blue tick marks, who read the message and all, deleting the message, replying to somebody, replying to personally to somebody in a group. All this. The person who started WhatsApp might have all these ideas already, but did they start building all those at once? No. What did they do? They first, they are doing it in iterative development. Iterative development is nothing but first they put the product in front of the customer with basic features. So what do? They must have all these thoughts, but they divide those thoughts into meaningful chunks called sprints. Okay, so they will say sprint. They will divide all the thoughts into meaningful chunks called sprint cycles. So for what they will do is, okay, in sprint cycle 1, we are going to build the product. Okay, within 2 sprints, they'll think within 2 sprints we'll build a product that is very basic. Okay, where people can sign up and people can start communicating. Okay, that's the basic product. Let's put it in front of the customers. Now, in Sprint Cycle 3, let's build the ability to be able to create groups. In Sprint Cycle 4, let's give the ability to be able to share pictures and videos. Sprint Cycle 5, let's give the blue tick feature. In Sprint Cycle 6, let's give the phone calling feature. In Sprint Cycle 7, let's give the video calling feature. In Sprint Cycle 8, let's give the delete feature. In Sprint Cycle, so what are they doing? They are giving the basic product, They're dividing the whole idea into meaningful chunks called sprints. The end goal of Agile is to put the product in front of the customer as early as possible. So what advantage that, and see, it's not that they decided to give the phone call feature last month and they did it in 1 month. You can, there might be a product. I mean, the phone call or video calling feature might be, the development for that might have started in Sprint 2, but it is only, their target of deployment was in Sprint 8, So they are doing it in iterative methods, okay? So they take each sprint, each sprint is a waterfall of its own, okay? That means within, like I spoke, within first and second sprint, they thought, okay, we will give the basic product where they can sign up and they can communicate with their contacts. See, that is the first thing that they decided. Right? So for that, what are the requirements that are needed? What is the technical design that is needed? Let's develop it, let's test it, let's UAT it, and let's deploy. So within one, iterative stands for, each sprint is a waterfall of its own. Agile is nothing but, within each sprint, they will have some meaningful goals. And what do? They gather the requirements for that. They do a technical design. They develop it, deploy it, and do the UAT, develop, test, UAT, and deploy the product. Then in Sprint 2, same thing. Sprint 2, they will have some goals. Okay, for Sprint 2, we are going to make these things happen. So they will, put the design document for that, develop it, test it, UAT, deploy. Same thing. So it's Agile is nothing but iterative waterfall. Now, what are those iterations? Each sprint cycle is an iteration within each sprint cycle. They call it as sprint. Those meaningful chunks is called as sprint, and each sprint they will have goals for each sprint, and they will use the iterative methodology to do this. Now, what is the biggest advantage of this? The biggest advantage is, they will be able to keep up with the latest things that are happening because the development is happening continuously, because the scope is not frozen down. So, they give the feature, they give the basic product, and let's say something some crazy thing that happens, okay? And they want to, some crazy things that happen in the world, and they want to be a forerunner on it, and they want to implement something related to that. What do? They will, move their sprint plan to, they will incorporate those changes in between sprint, and they will try to, imbibe those features onto their technology. So, and because the product is in front of the customers, the product is in front of the customers, right away. So customers have, they'll give feedback. You know what? We might need this feature. We might sometimes, we post a picture in a group that we don't intend to, and we quickly want to delete it. These are all the feedback that they get from the customers, and they work on those features, to make customers happy. So, constantly, they will be able to incorporate the feedback, valuable feedback that they get from the customer, so that the product that they are building is current with the, with the social changes that are happening. So that's Agile methodology. But what is one of the biggest disadvantage in Agile? What the major advantage in Waterfall is the biggest disadvantage in Agile. Because in Waterfall, the major advantage is because the scope is frozen. As a technical person, when they say, we are going to do just this. So when the scope is frozen, you will, the design strategies that you follow or the coding strategies that you follow, you can make, a decision that's best suitable for that problem. But in Agile, if every month they're going to change something, today they will ask you to do something, and next month they'll come and say, destroy the whole thing that you have done and do it, maybe we'll do it differently. So developing things following best practices, doing the optimized design approach is hard in here because the scope keeps on swinging, the scope keeps on changing. So it is really hard to keep up with those and be able to implement, the ideal design patterns and stuff. That's one. And the second thing is, there is no end to it. Where would that end be? I know, of course, software companies, employ people, they will have projects, but for any project, there has to be an end, right? But in Agile methodology, where would that end be? It's a good thing for developers, of course, because we tend to keep our jobs more longer. But from a project perspective, from the chief financial officer, from the budgeting perspective, where is an end to this? Like, when would we call it a full stop? It's always a comma in Agile. There is no full stop in Agile. Like, people come up with ideas, they change this, they rip this apart, they move something. Like, it's always it keeps extending, it keeps on going forward. There is no full stop to it. Those are the two disadvantages where technically it's hard to follow the best practices and follow the best design approaches to for the product. And the second thing is there is no end to the scope. It keeps on always changing. It keeps on moving. By the time you do something, it might become old, and you might want to do something more. So that's the disadvantage in it. Okay. Any questions? Any thoughts on software development lifecycle? Where would we come here as developers? I mean, you can be a Salesforce admin, or you can be a Salesforce developer as well. You will basically come in this phase. If you are a technical architect, you will come in this phase and this phase probably. You will be designing how the solution should be, how some idea can be converted into a viable technical solution, and you will also work with developers to make sure whatever that you're thinking, is correctly reflected by the developer. So, in order to get here, probably you have to work here for some good chunk of time. So, the ins and outs of development, and probably, you can go here. So, business analysts work here. Like, basically, business analysts work here. Technical architects or solution architects work here. Developers work here. QA team, of course, testing team works here. And then there is release management. I think you might have heard in the recently, what is that? What is the term? In Amazon Web Services, there is a technology for this. Like, so, I mean, the release managers, release managers are the people who work in the deployment. So, these are the actual end users. So, except this, all these are technical jobs that we can get. We can go into any area. Now, there is another job called project management as well. So, project managers are nothing but, so they will oversee all this. Like, when I say they will oversee all this, so their job is to maintain the timeline. Like, how they will go to the BA and ask, okay, this is the requirement. How long it would take for you to complete the business requirement? They'll go to the development team or the technical architects and ask them how long it is. I mean, not exact estimate, but at least rough estimate. How long it's going to take you to be able to give the finish the development. They will ask the testing team also how long it's going to take for them to test it. They will plan some time for UAT. So, based on the timings or based on the estimates that are given by the development team and everybody, they will form a project plan. They say, okay, it takes this long, all this time. So, and these many developers working on it, and hence here we can go live. So they will maintain the project plan, and they will talk with the person, the sponsor. I mean, of course, for all these things to happen, there has to be a project sponsor, right, who is spending money on it. So they will work closely with the project sponsor and say, based on the requirement, based on the resources that we have, it's going to take these many working days, these many hours, and hence we might end up paying this much. And now it's up to the project sponsor to be able to, can we remove these features? Can we add more? Depending on the budget that they have, that's the project manager's duty, to be able to facilitate those meetings, to be able to talk to all the people involved, and put up that project plan, timeline, and of course preparing beautiful slides and presenting and all this. So that's the project manager job. Any questions? The coolest job This is the most coolest job. This is the most happiest job, at least for me. That's the most happiest job because you don't have to write a document. Writing documents is so hard, man. So you don't have to write a document. I know it's hard in the initial days. In the initial days, development is hard because technically you need to know the technology and all. But once you figure out the technology, all we have to do is, when there is a requirement, just implement the code and sit idle. That's it. We don't have to talk in a meeting. We don't have to do anything. All we have to do is just write code for it. If it is, testers will test it. If they have some feedback, we implement it. When you know the technology, right? Like once you know the technology, it's very easy to do those. And we will not have any headaches of, project management, this timeline, that timeline. We don't have anything. So in the initial days, I think this is the most hardest job because, if you do not know the language, if you do not know what needs to be done, it would be hard for probably first 6 months or 7 months, it'd be a bit hard. But once you know your way in it, this is the most easiest, most enjoyable job in the whole world. This is hard too, technical architects, they have to give estimates, they have to do lots of things. So this is hard too. This is too hard, man. BA is too hard, to write the requirements, write the use cases. Developers will cut them. At the same time, testers will cut them. It's a hardest job because you have to write so much. You have to write so many documents. Yeah, that's why I love being these. I wish. I think that's the phase that you will enjoy the most in your life once you figure it out. Again, these are all my personal opinions. I don't know. These are not the general thoughts in the outside world, but at least what I experienced in my 5 years career. Okay. Any questions? Anybody? Let's take. Sorry. Anybody? Any question?
Yeah, in the Agile method, the testing and the deployment will be done at the same time?
No. They cannot be, right? Testing team have to test. They have to, so in Agile, what happens, right? Here is how it happens. So they have the requirements. What they do is, once the requirements, the BAs, what they do is, they create tickets. Tickets are nothing but, let's say, you want to implement a feature. So that implementing feature, that feature will be divided into tickets, like 15 tickets or 20 tickets or whatever based on the capacity. So those tickets will be assigned to developer. Like let's say you have 3 developers. Each developer, let's say they get 5 tickets each. So once, as a developer, I get my ticket. I look at my ticket. I look at the description and everything. I write code or do some configuration changes to match that ticket and say, okay, this is ready for testing. And I will assign that ticket to a tester. So by the end, before the end of the sprint or before the deployment, or at least 3 to 4 days before the deployment date, all the tickets have to be tested. Like all the tickets that are assigned to the developers have to be assigned to testing team, and the testing team should test it and should mark all the tickets as pass. Only then a deployment team will pick those tickets and deploy it. So they cannot happen at the same time. But what you said is right. Deployment, I'm only talking in terms of production deployment. Between one environment, within there won't be only one test environment. There will be numerous test environments. Between one test environment to another test environment, yes, they happen very frequently. Like some people deploy it every 15 minutes, every 1 hour, too, between one test environment to another. But when I meant the deployment here, I'm talking about the actual production deployment. Live deployment only happens after the QA team, the testing team, and UAT team provides their approval.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm sure, some of might be thinking, like, what is this got to do with Salesforce? Like I mentioned, it doesn't matter which technology you are, as long as you are working in IT. This is it. This is what everything, every day you go walk into a Scrum meeting, in Agile methodology, you have something called Scrum Meeting. Scrum Meeting is nothing but you have a daily call. Every day there will be a call, and which would be either, which will be led by either a project manager. Sometimes they call it a Scrum Master. So where, you go to the call, like every day morning, we say, hey, like they will ask you, hey, Shravan, you have these 5 tickets assigned to you. What is the status of this? I'll say, yeah, out of the 5 tickets, I'm completed with 2. I'm working on the 3rd one. Maybe I'll be done by noon, and the 4th one, I'll start working later. Something like, depending on how your work is going on, you will update your status, and you'll say, this is my target by the end of this day. And next day when they come, they'll make a note of it. And next day when they come, hey, did you reach your target? Yes, that's good. If not, do you have any blocker? Like, what happened? And when you tell, if you have a blocker, they'll try to help you, or they will try to, the technical architect will try to help you to resolve that blocker, things like that. So that's nothing but a Scrum call. I'll show you, like, once we finish I'll take one session. I'll show you what, I mentioned tickets, right? How the ticket looks like, and there are some tools like Jira. Jira is one of the tools that a lot of people use. So Jira is a tool where you can manage all the tickets. So, how the tickets are created, how they are assigned, how would you assign back, all those things. I'll explain you, because those things will be asked. Hey, what ticketing tool that you use in your project? You can just say, yeah, we use Jira, and this is how we manage it. And one of the most common question would be, as a developer, like, this is one of the most common question and a tricky question. So you say, if you're in the interview, if you say, hey, I'm a Salesforce developer, they will ask, how does your day looks like? Like, what does your typical day looks like? And, the answer can be, every day morning I go to office, we have a Scrum call. In Scrum call, I update my status. And because we follow Agile methodology, I have my tickets assigned to me. After I attend the Scrum call, I go back to my work and try to solve as many tickets as possible. That's it. You don't have to do anything. Like, anything, even, any work that needs to be assigned to you, it has to be in the form of a ticket. And you can say, my job is to ensure that I have as less tickets as possible by solving them, by finishing them. So that can be your day. That can be your day. You don't have to make up any story. You don't have to tell that you do 1,000 things. All you do is attend the Scrum call, make sure I finish my tickets. And maybe, sometimes I help other developers, or I take help from other developers. So these are the common conversations that happen in the office. But otherwise, my regular job is to go to office, take the tickets, and try to solve or close as many tickets as possible. That's it. You don't have to say anything extra or anything less. Okay? All right. So we'll just take, 2-3 minutes break before we'll start on the multi-tenancy architecture. Okay? I'll be back in a couple minutes. We'll talk about multi-tenancy, and so for let's try to understand what multi-tenancy is. So for that, I'm just logging into Salesforce. Okay. So I just signed up for this. Look at this. Just observe NA85. Okay. In the URL, look at NA85. So this NA basically stands for North America. Okay. 85 stands for the instance number. So this, I mean, you can look at your URL. It might be NA85 or it can be something else. Do you guys have same or different? Anybody has different instance?
I think we get different.
Yeah, it depends on, like, when you sign up. Salesforce has so many instances. So, like, I'll show you what instances that they have. You see, they have these many instances. Okay, so AP is nothing like if you see, these are the instances like AP 0, 3, 4, 5, 6, 14. Like wherever you see AP, this is nothing but, let's say you are in India and you sign up for a Salesforce org in India, you will see AP in the URL. Like in the URL that you get here, you will see AP. Okay, let's choose only Americas. You see, all these are North America instances. Okay, so now what is mine? NA85, right? NA85. See, I'm on this instance. My Salesforce org is hosted on this instance. Okay, if you are seeing something else, if you are seeing something else, you are in a different instance. Now you might notice something called CS here. Like CS are nothing but, remember I told you sandboxes, right? All the sandbox instances are in CS instances. Like all the testing environments are hosted on the CS instances. All the production are hosted on these NA instances for North America. Like if you are in Asia Pacific, it'd be AP. If you are in Europe or Middle East, it would be something else, different instances. So these are okay. Now, I really do not know the technical definition of what instance means, but let me, at least from my understanding, okay, I just want to explain it from my understanding. It might not be exactly right, but this is my understanding of what this is. So we talk about what is mine, NA85, right? So NA85. I think what it means, I haven't read anywhere, but I'm just assuming it. I think what it means, see, Salesforce has so many data centers and all those, right? Now, within the data center, remember, Salesforce provides infrastructure as a service. That means, see, in order for this to run, like, for example, let's say, I go to Sales app. So I go to Sales app. I go to Opportunity. I just click New. Okay, I go to Sales app, Opportunity. I mean, I'm not showing any navigation step. Let's say I click Save. So when I click Save, what is happening? The data that I entered is being stored in the database. Okay. Now, for this to happen, like for this instance to appear here, for this UI to appear here like this, and when I type in the information and when I save, for that information to be stored, like we need servers, right? Servers are nothing but computers. Let's say you are working on a computer. Your computer is a server of its own, okay? And let's say your computer has very less memory, less RAM, less hard disk space. Your computer is a basic computer. If your computer has all those things very less, what happens when you try to open a page or when you try to type something? It saves slowly, right? Because the capacity of your server is less. Your server capacity was less, and hence it was all the things are processing slowly. Whereas if you're working on a, like probably some good configuration with good RAM and all, the moment you click the pages, the moment you open any tabs, all those things any folders in your computer, all those things would happen quickly because your server is powerful. So depending on the server and everything, the performance is being impacted. Now, similarly, this is my guess. I might be wrong, but I'm assuming Salesforce has many data centers. Okay, even though Salesforce has many data centers, within the data centers, I think within their data centers, they might have made partitions, and all those, like, each partition name is this, like they might have made a partition called NA37, they might have made a partition called NA8, NA21. That partitions are nothing but servers of its own. Like NA8 is nothing but they have their own, like, the server. When I use the word server, it's nothing but a processor, it's a computer. So when I hit save here, in order for my data to be saved, processed, and everything, the server on NA85 is helping me to do that. Okay, so the server on NA85 is helping me, is doing all this processing for me. Now, like you see maintenance, right? See, if you go to maintenance, it will tell me there are, so for the past, let's see, you see, there is an impact, CS80 instance is impacted. Okay, so what happened? Like when some instance is impacted, that means if there is a maintenance or something is going on NA85, okay, when NA85 instance is being maintained, I might have service disruption here because they are maintaining the NA85 server. I might have service disruption. Now, if you see your URL, it might be something else. You might be in NA14 or NA. When that server instance is being in maintenance, your org might be impacted. Okay, so this instance is nothing but the whole infrastructure that is belonging to you. So Salesforce is saying you are on NA85 instance. That means within one of the data center, there is whole server, database, and everything, the whole bundle. And that server space, the name of the server space that you are using is called NA85. What is the reason why Salesforce is giving us? Because when they give us, we will be able to know, okay, when is it being maintained? When are the releases done? All the, we'll get to those why Salesforce is giving us that. So it is nothing but the server that we are being operated on. Now, am I the only instance that are on NA85? I'm sure probably one of you might have the same NA85 instance. Or like, there might be so many other companies that are using Salesforce might have NA85. Might be on NA85. That means, see, this NA85 is a production instance where so many companies are there. Like so many, when I say so many, just like me, I work for a company. That company has a production instance, production org, and that production org might be on NA85 too. Like we do not know. When we look at the URL of that company, you would know. So in the same way, there are multiple production instances, and each production instance will have so many clients living on it. Okay? So now let's talk about what multi-tenancy means. Salesforce follows an architecture called multi-tenant architecture. So what does that multi-tenant, like the name itself is multi-tenant. That means here is a server called NA85, and how many instances of Salesforce are on NA85? There can be numerous. Okay, so on a single server or on a single server instance, there are numerous tenants using these server resources. So when I am saving this, when I am operating this, when I am using this, what am I doing? I am using up the server space or server capability in NA85. If your org, like, if the org that you are in says something different, that means you are using up the server space or using up the infrastructure services on that instance, on that specific instance. Is that, like, see, how many customers might Salesforce have? They have millions of customers. Okay, and take off the CS instance. All the CS instances are what you call sandbox testing environment. Now you only have very limited, like I think they have around probably how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. How many rows? One. Probably 10 like this, and maybe they have around 90 to 95, or maybe, yeah, 95 production instances. Okay. So they have 95 production instances. But how many clients do they have? They have millions of customers. That means on every production server or on every production instance, there are at least a million customers living. I'm saying million is less, but there might be more. But on an average, if we take Salesforce has 9 million customers, or 90 million customers, whatever. I'm not going into those math. But so every instance here have at least 500,000 or million customers living. So for Salesforce, even I am a customer now. My instance that I am in, I am a customer now. This is my own org. Similarly, you have your own org. Everybody has their own org. And on every instance, there are numerous amounts of people living on it. Okay? So this architecture, the architecture where on a single server instance, there are, I think the word itself explains it, it's self-explanatory, multi-tenant architecture. That means on a single server, there are numerous tenants using up the same space. Okay? Very, very, very similar to apartment. If you take apartment as an example, just take an apartment as an example. So let's assume this is an apartment and the name of the apartment is NA85. Just assume the name of the apartment is NA85. So what is this? So within NA85, there are so many flats, right? You might, if you take a huge apartment building, there might be 200 or 300 flats. Now, who are those flats? They are called tenants. So NA85, in an NA85 instance, there are 300 tenants. So apartment is a very good example of multi-tenant architecture. Now, what are some of the advantages or disadvantages or features? Let's talk about just features. Now, all the resources are commonly used, right? That means, for example, let's say the apartment, it might have 300 tenants. It will have one overhead tank. Okay? Let's assume that overhead tank is nothing but server space or whatever it is. So the resource, let's assume that overhead tank with water is a resource. So all the resources have, it is a common resource, and these resources from a common source, every tenant is using the same resources, right? In the same way, this NA85 instance here has database, the server, the web server, app server, network security, everything will be there in that. And whenever any customer on NA85 is performing any transaction, okay, the server space in this NA85 is being used. Okay, this is called as multi-tenant architecture. Now, how is it different from regular? How is it different from regular? Let's say you built an app, or you are trying to build an app in Java or .NET. So what would you do? You will have an on-premise solution. We are a cloud solution here. On-premise solution is nothing but the company would have their own database within their office or somewhere. They will have their own database. They will have their own server. They will have their everything. They will have their own disk. The company will maintain their own app server. It's like independent house. Okay. So the difference is independent. If you are living in an independent house, you will have your own water tank, you will have your own electricity, you will have everything of your own. It's a single tenant. So on-premise, you will hear the word Salesforce is a cloud computing. What is the opposite of cloud? I mean, not the opposite. What is the other word of opposite of using cloud? It's on-premise solution. On-premise solution is nothing but they are hosted by yourself. All the application building, maintenance, everything is maintained by the company itself. It's like an independent house where you are building your own resources and everything. Whereas Salesforce is a multi-tenant architecture where we are given a small space, where we are given a tiny amount of space in the huge server. Okay. So that's why this is multi-tenant architecture. Salesforce follows multi-tenant architecture, and I am one of the, all the clients that are using are tenants of this server, any server. Now, do we have any, do you see any disadvantage? I mean, not disadvantage. Do you see any issue with this model? Do you see any issue? Okay, with the apartment. Let me tell you what my issue is. So, we have, like I mentioned, on an apartment, we have a overhead tank, okay? There is some lazy guy or girl, whatever it is, that person turned on the water taps, all the water taps were turned on, they locked the apartment and they went out. What happens? Will everybody be impacted or only that person be impacted? So, because there is one overhead tank, but this person left all the taps open and they locked they locked their apartment and they went out. So what happens? The water will be drained out from the overhead tank, and when the whole water is drained out, what happens? All the tenants will be impacted. Nobody will get water. Because of the mistake made by one person, everybody else will be impacted. Okay? The same situation applies here too. There is a problem in multi-tenant architecture. That means, see, processing is nothing but, see, let's say I'm writing custom code here. Like, let's say I'm writing custom code and that code execute. I'll give you an example right here. Okay, I click edit. Let's assume that I click edit and I click save. So I wrote some code. Whenever I hit save, my code gets executed. Okay, I built some code and that code gets executed the moment I hit save. Imagine that scenario. And you see here right now when I hit edit and hit save, it's not even taking within a fraction of a second, the whole information is getting saved and being stored. Okay, that means whatever code that is behind it is so effective that it is not consuming the server resources a lot. It is consuming a tiny bit because the code was built so effectively. It is quickly, like it's just using it is just using very tiny amount of server space or server resources and getting saved. Let's say now I introduce my code. I'm writing my code and that code gets executed when I hit save button. And the code I have written is so inefficient. I have written some infinite loops. It keeps on executing. It never gets completed. So the code that I have written is so inefficient and it keeps on executing. So what happens? Now, because I'm living on NA85, when I hit save, the server is trying to help me. The NA85 server is trying to help me process my code, but my code is so inefficient that it keeps on consuming the resources. So what happened? Now, because of the stupid code that I have written, all the clients, there are, like I mentioned, there are millions of clients on one instance. Because the server is, it's a common server. The server is trying to help me. Because the server is busy helping me, the other clients, when they try to save their records, because the server capacity, let's say the server capacity is 100 and it is I occupy 20 of it, and for all the other clients there is only 80 remaining. So automatically the power, because it gets less power, the transactions will become slow for other people. So just because one person is doing bad, everybody gets impacted. Everybody gets impacted, just like an apartment example I spoke. So now, is this a good thing? Like, people are paying millions and millions buying Salesforce licenses and trying to use it. And just because somebody is writing bad code or somebody is following bad practices, if all other clients are impacted, it's not a good thing. You're paying millions and you get bad service or you get slow processing. It's a bad thing. So that's why what do? Salesforce has something called as governor limits. If you are becoming a developer of Salesforce, this is the word that you will be hearing again every day. The word governor limit is the word that you will hear every day. Now, what are those governor limits? Let's talk in the example of apartment. Let's say, I told you, right? The one family, they opened all the taps and they went. Imagine the apartment is using some advanced technology. The moment water taps are not touched for 1 minute, the tap automatically shuts off. Imagine they have a technology like that. If the water tap is not touched, or if no activity takes place for 1 or 2 minutes, automatically the tap shuts down. Or if a water tap delivers water continuously like after 10 liters of water delivery, it would automatically be stopped. Unless you initiate it again, it would stop. If the apartment follows some advanced technologies like this or techniques like this, what happens? Would everybody be safe? Yes, right? No matter you're stupid enough to open all the taps and lock your door and go out, not everybody is not impacted because of your mistake, because there is a limit, there is a governing limit that is put by the apartment. In the same way, Salesforce has something called as governor limits, where they impose some limits on how you write your code. Okay, so when you're writing your code, you cannot write in whatever way that you want. Salesforce imposes some limits for the betterment of us. See, if you are following best practices, it's good for us too. And at the same time, Salesforce says, you know what? For everything that you are doing here, we will impose some limits so that we can serve, so that Salesforce can serve the resources equally for everybody. So no other client is impacted because of the mistakes that we make. So what happened? Let's say if we write a bad code that that turns into infinite loops, after certain point of time, after certain after 5 seconds. I mean, I'm talking in seconds, but they have different limits. After 5 seconds or 10 seconds, the code automatically fails. The code automatically shuts down. So this way, the server resource that is used to run this code frees up, and hence everybody else will be getting full service. So these are called like governor limits. So because Salesforce operates in a multi-tenant architecture, they have imposed some limits called as governor limits. What is the use of a governor limit? Governor limits help you prevent monopolization of shared resources, right? They are shared resources. So why Salesforce putting governor limits, or what is the use of a governor limit? Governor limits help Salesforce prevent monopolization of shared resources. Okay, so because one client is using so much, other client shouldn't be in a loss. So that's why governor limits it's a good thing. Actually, governor limits are a good thing. Whereas, take an example of independent house. If you are doing things in-house, if you have your own SQL server, or if you have your own .NET or Java application, that's your own water tank. You have your own everything. You write bad code, you write good code, doesn't matter. I mean, you might be impacted, but because of your bad code, you are not impacting any other client. So it's up to you, because it's your own house, it's up to you. You can write whatever code, you can leave the tabs, you can, have a water fountain, or you can be conservative and, you can do whatever you want. It's up to you. Of course, any project wouldn't do that. People try to, write optimized code and everything. But as a platform, Java or .NET or these things do not impose any limits. But whereas Salesforce, because Salesforce is running on a multi-tenant architecture, the platform itself, Salesforce itself, will impose you some limits. Okay? One example, I'm just saying one example. One example is, you see, you have these fields, right? Like you can count 1, 2, whatever it is. You can only have 500 fields like this. Or if it is a custom table, you can have 800 fields. So in a table, in a database table, in Salesforce, you can never have more than 800 columns. So whatever your data requirements are or anything, if you are using a table, I mean, 800 is huge, huge, huge number. But they are just saying, hey, we will give you so much flexibility. That doesn't mean you can go crazy and create a table with 5,000 columns or 2,000 columns. They're saying the hard limit is 800. We will not allow you to create more than 800 columns. That's a governor limit. Okay. So any code, whenever you are executing any code, the execution should be completed within 10 seconds. Okay, if the code execution does not complete within 10 seconds, they will shut down the code. So what you should do, as a developer, when we are writing the code, we need to make sure the transaction, whatever we are writing, the code execution should be completed way before 10 seconds, just to be on the safer side. So, I mean, they have a whole book published on what are the limits on individually, but there are some most common governor limits that we face, and we'll talk about them. We will talk about them. We'll see practically hitting some of the governor limits and see transaction failures and everything, and we'll also see how to solve them and stuff. But That's about multi-tenancy and governor limits and why Salesforce have governor limits. Any questions here? Anybody? Any questions? Does it make sense? So that means, like, if you see this right now, at this current point of time, all the instances are perfectly running. This green mark indicates available. So all the instances are perfectly running. Sometimes, very, very rarely, they will have a performance degradation. I think it's very, very rare you see service disruption. But, because they work too hard to make sure everything is running correctly, because people are paying for their services and, they don't want to be. All right. Any questions on the topics that we discussed today on software development lifecycle or multi-tenancy, and why Salesforce, multi-tenancy, and why we have a concept called governor limits in place?
No.
Okay, that's good. Can you guys do one thing? Tomorrow, before you come tomorrow, can you guys try to change this picture here and try to have another picture, whatever you like? Just, again, you can Google it. One of the reason why I'm asking you to do this is it's a tiny, simple exercise, but one of the most important trait that you should have in order to work in IT is to Google it better, okay? Because no company will restrict you. At least so far, whatever companies that I work, most of the times, or 99% of the times, my day will be spending in Google. Like, okay, here is the situation. What is the code? What should I do? Looking for documentation. Like, I just Google things. Because, see, how would I know how to change that picture? There has to be somewhere in the documentation that should tell me, right? Because it's a platform. I didn't build this platform. Like Salesforce as a company, their group of engineers are building this platform and this technology. How would I know that how to change that picture there? Unless I read their documentation, where in the documentation they mention something like, hey, go here, upload this picture and it would automatically change here. Something has to be done, right? So 99% of the cases, everybody has to know about the technology through documentation. Now, if you are experienced, if you have done it once, you might not go for documentation again, and hence you might be able to do things quickly. That's why people look for experienced resources. Now, that doesn't mean an experienced resource knows everything. Like I mentioned, I'm working for 5 years, and I still Google. Most of my time is spent on, searching things on how to do, because every day you get new challenges and new problems. So, just to figure out, how to do some research in Google and try to do that, try to change this logo here. See if it's even possible. Not, try to change that logo there before you come tomorrow. Is this time still a good time? Tomorrow, same time, 10 o'clock? Okay, I take that idea. So, yeah, we'll talk about the database introduction, and we'll start about a custom app creation. Like, so probably from tomorrow we'll be going on into some hands-on things. But I promise, whatever things that we have discussed in 3 days, they will be useful. I know they might not seem like much value adds, but they will be useful in regular conversations that you have, or in order to get the understanding of the technology more. Okay, but like I mentioned, from tomorrow we will. I'll talk about the database introduction, what is relational database, and we'll start building a custom application within Salesforce to understand the platform. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions before we sign off? All right, guys. Thank you so much.